Hello, Scarlet Marvel here, and welcome to this week's Marvel News Roundup. We've got quite a bit of news to get through, so let's get started with a look at the box office, where Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has entered its 5th weekend in theaters. For its 5th weekend, the movie made $4.2 million domestic, a 40.9% drop. And to this day, it has a $206.7 million domestic total and a $463.8 million worldwide total. It's getting pretty close to the end of its run, as it's slowing down already at the weekend box office quite significantly, and it honestly doesn't seem like it's going to even hit 500 million worldwide, which means that it'll be one of the lowest grossing Marvel sequels, and it'll be quite a disappointment, as it is very unlikely to even pass the first Ant-Man film. Of course, it did pass it domestically already, but the worldwide total is unlikely to pass Ant-Man's worldwide total. This is looking like it could be a bad sign for Marvel, but we'll wait until Guardians Volume 3 comes out to really have a clear picture as to the direction Marvel's going in at the box office. Now, the big news for Marvel this week came as a big shock, as Victoria Alonso, Marvel Studios' president of physical and post-production, visual effects, and animation, has been let go from the company after 17 years working with Marvel Studios. She's been working with the studios since before the first Iron Man, and has been credited as a co-producer on a large majority of the MCU projects since the very first film. Now, this comes as a big shock, but given that she has the president position over VFX, it may be connected to the recent reports that have been coming out over the last year of abusive conditions for the VFX workers at Marvel. Now, new reports are claiming that Victoria Alonso was singularly responsible for the toxic work environment. This comes as a shock, as I've actually had a lot of respect for her, particularly because she's been one of the main champions over at Marvel, pushing for diversity and inclusion. And I think that that's very important in projects that are supposed to exemplify the real world in a sci-fi fantasy way. And given Phase 4 with a far more diverse cast of heroes, I think that she's done a good part there. However, I don't think I can atone at all her work if she has really contributed singularly, or even at all, to the toxic work environment that VFX workers have been forced to endure. So let me know down in the comments what you think of this news. Is it a good thing, a bad thing, a bit of both? Doesn't have to be black and white, but let me know what you think down in the comments. Now, a lot of the news for Marvel Studios this week comes in the form of news around their shows. First up, we have some news on X-Men 97, with head writer Beau DeMaio giving us some new details about the show, confirming that the series will pick up several months after the finale of the original series, which saw Professor X go to space to heal after being shot by Henry Gyrich. It seems that in the aftermath of this event, the X-Men will be forced to navigate a world that is finally sympathetic towards mutants, with even Magneto joining the team as its new leader and trying to follow Professor X's vision of a world where mutants and humans can coexist. It seems that under this landscape, characters like Cyclops and Storm will step up as leaders, while characters like Jean Grey and then the on-again, off-again couple Rogue and Gambit will be navigating if they can finally exist in the world as the mutants they really are. Bodemayo has stated that the central question seems to be, how do you face, or how do you embrace the future? It's also been confirmed that Mr. Sinister will play the part as the primary antagonist in the series, with what's being described as a foolproof plan to stop the X-Men. So with all this information coming out, I'm very excited, as I'm a huge X-Men fan and a big fan of the original X-Men 92 series, and I'm really excited to see the direction they're going in. I think it's a really good idea to focus on embracing a new future, as that really seems to be something that we in the real world are struggling with. So of course it's awesome that the X-Men are going to teach us how we can do just that. From the animated X-Men, we move on to some live-action show news, as several set photos from Daredevil Born Again, which has just begun filming as of a few weeks ago, have given us our first look at various characters, including Charlie Cox back in the titular role of Daredevil, aka Matt Murdock, and actresses Margarita Leviva and Nikki M. James in currently unknown roles, though potentially they are both playing different love interests of Matt Murdock. Set photos have also shown props for a 1999 flashback scene with young Matt Murdock, and another flashback scene set in the 1970s with a young Wilson Fisk. So it seems that we're gonna get a totally new fleshed out backstory for these two characters, and totally new supporting characters for Matt Murdock in these new potential love interests. I'm excited to see what more information we'll find out in the coming weeks as it continues to film. Looking further out, we've got some news on writers, with Megan McDonnell, one of the writers for WandaVision, The Marvels, and Agatha Coven of Chaos, as well as Peter Cameron, one of the writers for WandaVision, Moon Knight, and Werewolf by Night, have both been added as writers for the still yet to be officially announced Vision Quest series. It's exciting that we're getting some news on Vision Quest, and hopefully it'll be officially announced sometime soon with casting information and maybe some plot details. Probably sometime this summer at Comic-Con or something like that. Now, another report has stated from Variety that Marvel's Disney Plus projects for this year have been cut down from 5 to 3 or 4. This is interesting, as there were actually 7 Marvel Disney Plus projects announced for this year. So the wording that it's being cut down from 5 to 3 or 4 kind of makes me think that this is only speaking on the live action projects, meaning that What If Season 2 and X-Men 97 could still be safe. But talking about the live action projects, it's been pretty obvious that we're gonna get them cut down this year. And the real question now is, which ones are gonna air this year? The ones that seem like a given are Secret Invasion and Loki Season 2, but Echo, Agatha Coven of Chaos, and Ironheart could be in some form of limbo. However, as the report has stated that it's being cut down to 3 or 4, it seems that at least 1, if not 2, of these 3 projects is safe. My money is probably on Echo as the safest bet, as it was originally announced to release early this summer. But Ironheart could also be safe, as from what I've heard, it's done filming already. I imagine that leaves Agatha Coven of Chaos as a definite bet for next year rather than this year. Speaking of these shows, insider Casey Walsh claims to confirm that Secret Invasion will be releasing this June, which is a pushback from its original spring release date. Now moving on to some movie news. Set photos of Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson have confirmed that Captain America: New World Order has officially begun filming. Not too many details from these images so far, but I'm sure more set photos will be released in the coming weeks as they continue to film and more cast members potentially get introduced in concept photos. Now, for our last piece of news with movies or shows, we've got the potential announcement of the runtime for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. As on Atom Ticket's website, the movie has been listed as 2 hours and 29 minutes long, which would put this movie at tied with Avengers Infinity War as Marvel Studios' 4th longest film. With 2.5 hours nearly, this is going to be a lengthy film, if it turns out that this runtime is true, being the longest Guardians of the Galaxy film, which is in line with what James Gunn has said a few weeks ago, I believe, and only being beat out by 3 other films: Eternals, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and of course, Avengers Endgame. So we're in for a lot of story, and a lot of time with the Guardians who we may never see again, at least in the same capacity. So I'm very excited for this movie to release in just a little over a month now. Now let's move on to comic news, and we've got a lot to talk about here actually, so let's get started with the comics that released this past Wednesday. They were Amazing Spider-Man number 22, Avengers number 9, the Facsimile Edition, Avengers Rage of Ultron Marvel Tales number 1, Carnage number 11, Doctor Strange number 1, Joe Fixit number 3, Marauders number 12, Monica Rambeau Photon number 4, Punisher number 10, She-Hulk number 11, Spider-Man The Lost Hunt number 5, Star Wars Darth Vader number 32, Storm and the Brotherhood of Mutants number 2, Tiger Division number 5, Wasp number 3, Woman of Marvel number 1, and Extreme X-Men number 4. There are some awesome comics here, so make sure to check them out at your local comic store or online wherever you buy your comics. Now, we also got some news in regards to an upcoming event with a reading list for Carnage Reigns, the crossover event that's coming out between May and June. This event will be beginning in Carnage Reigns Alpha number 1 this May, before continuing in the Miles Morales Spider-Man, Carnage, and Red Goblin series, then ending in Carnage Reigns Omega number 1 in June. This event seems exciting. It's gonna have Carnage taking on the Marvel Universe, more specifically Miles Morales, as Spider-Man seems to be the last man standing against Carnage, and this event promises to shake the Marvel Universe and set up the next Venom event, with Summer of Symbiotes coming up as a big crossover event this summer that we still don't have many details about. I'm excited to see where this event takes our 3 main characters in the event. We also got the announcement this week that Kelly Thompson's run on Captain Marvel will officially end this June with issue number 50. And this is a record-breaking run, as it's becoming Carol Danvers' longest run as Captain Marvel, as well as tying for her longest run overall, tying with Miss Marvel Volume 2 from the 2000s. Now, I haven't read a ton of this run, but what I have read is really, really good, and I recommend you all give it a read for yourself and check out issue number 50, which is going to be a supersized issue coming out this June. The big comics news of the week comes in the form of Marvel Comics solicits for June. The highlights include the start of the Ultimate Invasion miniseries, brand new ongoing series for The Incredible Hulk and Black Panther, new miniseries for Loki and Spider-Man India, this year's Marvel Voices Pride issue, the final issues of Captain Marvel and Daredevil, the conclusions of the Carnage Reigns and Cold War events, the beginning of the Contest of Chaos event, and the lead-up to the Fall of X event. Check out the solicits for yourself for more information, and let me know if you want me to go more in-depth with future solicits. I could definitely make a video about that all on its own, going over each and every issue that's was announced. Now, moving on to news outside of comics, movies, and shows. We don't have too much today, with only the announcement that Star-Lord's helmet will be available as a new LEGO build on April 1st, as part of the Infinity Saga build series. Last but certainly not least, we've got the bonus nerdy news segment. And this week, we're going over to Marvel's rivals, as DC just recently released Shazam! Fury of the Gods. So let's go over how it's doing critically and commercially. So the critical reception has been pretty average, with a Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 51% and a much higher audience score of 87%. Metacritic has given it a 47 out of 100 from critics and a 5.7 out of 10 from the audience. And CinemaScore gives it a B+. Interestingly, this reception is very similar to the reception that Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania received, which makes me think, do critics and audiences just kind of see superhero movies as more or less the same nowadays? And also, why are these two movies that most people are saying are relatively good, if not amazing, getting a much worse reception than even subpar superhero films of a decade ago? Like, after watching Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, for example, I definitely wouldn't say it deserves to be lower than Thor: The Dark World. So I'm sure Shazam! Fury of the Gods is also receiving some harsher criticism than is necessary. I think it's interesting that it speaks to the new landscape that we are in for superhero films, and I wonder, is this a sign of the end? Are superhero films slowly creeping towards their deathbed? Or are we still just waiting for those big superhero films to come on, like Avengers, or on the DC side, Superman or Batman? We'll see. But I'm hopeful that this is just a weak moment and that superhero films will be able to recover in the grand scheme. Now, while the reception has been pretty similar for Shazam! Fury of the Gods and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, the box office has not been the same, as DC basically said, you know what, Marvel? You took a fall, so we're gonna take a fall even further. As Shazam! Fury of the Gods had a 30.1 million domestic opening and a 65.5 million worldwide opening. To this day, it's gotten 35.6 million domestic total and 70.2 million worldwide total, meaning it didn't really make much money throughout the week, and its initial opening was far below the predicted opening and is the lowest of DC films, with the exception of Wonder Woman 2 and the Suicide Squad, which both released early on in the pandemic. So this is a pretty bad sign for DC, but it also speaks to the situation that DC is in right now, as they're in a weird transition period where they're still, after Shazam! Fury of the Gods, still 3 more films to be released before the soft reboot being speared by James Gunn. So what does this mean exactly? Is this year just gonna be like this for DC, with each movie struggling to perform well? Maybe. Maybe not. The Flash seems to be bringing a lot of hype towards it, particularly with Batman being a big part of the film. But then there's also the wild card effect of Ezra Miller, who has not really been seen very positively in the media lately due to their appearances in media lately, in the news in particular. So maybe this is just Shazam! Fury of the Gods, as the first Shazam didn't do amazingly either. So we'll see how it goes. While I've never truly been that interested in DC, I know I'm still waiting for James Gunn to reboot the franchise before really delving deep into it. But I'll give Shazam! Fury of the Gods a chance eventually. I'm just not sure when, as I'm not super excited, and this critical reception and commercial reception doesn't really inspire much in me. Hopefully DC will recover though. As a big Marvel fan, I think it's important for there to be healthy competition at the box office. And I think that DC has the chance to recover, as it has iconic characters. And I really just want to see superhero films thrive. And for that to happen, Marvel and DC need to both work together. So that'll be all for this week's Marvel News Roundup. Thanks for joining me. And let me know what you thought of any of the news discussed down in the comments below. And make sure to join me next week for all your favorite Marvel news and any of the bonus news I decide to bring up. In the meantime though, make sure to check out any of the other marvelous videos up on the channel already. There should be some awesome suggestions in the corners for you right now. Well, have a great day and thanks!